It's absolutely wonderful to be here this morning. My name's Lucy Foster. I'm the Eco Church Officer for Northern England for Rocha UK, which in geographical terms means I have the same patch as Stephen Cotterill, minus a bit of Derbyshire, minus the mitre and the accompanying staff. And also he's from Essex, and what can you say about that? I'm from Kent, I'm allowed to say that. It's a kind of like a Sunderland-Newcastle thing, you know. North of the river, they're a bit dodgy. I'm also a curate in Carlisle Diocese, so I'm based in Kendal. That's where I've worked from and where I've come from this morning. And it's wonderful to be here. And I'd like to thank you for your invitation and for your diocese's generosity, financial generosity. We went out earlier this year, Rocha went out earlier this year to all the dioceses, all the bishops, asking for a contribution to continue our work, and you were by way and above the most generous of the dioceses. So thank you very, very much. Rocha itself is a Christian charity working to equip Christians and churches to protect and restore the environment for God, nature and all people. And we aim to inspire individuals and families to equip churches and church leaders to build partnerships and manage land for nature and people. My bit of the work is the Eco Church programme, which equips and supports churches through an award programme. Well, just skip through because I think we all know the reasons why we need to address the climate crisis currently. If we're not aware of that, you know, COP27 going on today kind of reminds us. Eco Church, this slide always used to say Eco Church is a framework for action, and I really didn't like that, so I changed it to a map and a compass for the journey, because Eco Church is about a holistic framework. Yes, it includes buildings, as we've talked about already this morning, but actually it's about looking at the whole of church life and personal Christian faith. So it looks at worship and teaching, it looks at buildings, it looks at land management, it looks at community and global engagement, and it looks at personal lifestyle. But taking a step back, as part of Durham Diocese's commitment to environmental action, to creation care, you are also signed up to a programme to being an eco-diocese, which is the level above kind of eco-church. So it's the diocesan standards to which you have signed up to includes a number of requirements, one of which is a number of eco-churches signed up. So you're supposed to have 10% of local churches registered and 5% on the system as going through the programme, and 5% of those local churches having reached awards. I'm not quite sure, I don't know whether Danny or Catherine can know how we're getting on with.
I think we've just about achieved that part.
Marvellous. And on track with everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on track with everything else, that's marvellous. So it's another sign of your great commitment. I'd like to say, you know, all the dioceses in the Church of England have now signed up to be eco-dioceses and are working through this. Some have already got to bronze. I'm not going to say how late in the game Carlisle got to join in, but there we go. But you got here way before us, so again. But if we're just looking at Eco Church in Durham Diocese, that's a map of the distribution of the blue. The blue flags are churches that have registered. The kind of browny ones are bronze awarded churches. The kind of grey ones are silver awarded churches, and that one gold one just at Hart in Hartlepool, above Hartlepool, is St Mary Magdalene's at Hart, who are your one gold awarded church. Yes, I think they should have a round of applause. And they achieved their gold award just this summer. They've done amazing work out there. If you want inspiration, I would encourage you to get in touch with them, go and have a look. They work in a particular context. You know, they're in a deep rural situation with a Saxon kind of background and a particular country context and a particular set of people, and they'll be different in all your churches. But if you do go and have a look, just speak to people, because it's all about what they're doing in their spot, and about change, and about the thinking and the reflection they've done. Do excuse me one moment while I look at what my notes. I do this when I'm preaching. I go off track and then I have to go back to my notes and go, oh yes, I've missed that bit out. I'm going to be here for till at the end of lunch, and some people have already had it come and had a chat with me. And one of the issues that one lady raised, and it's a very relevant one and one that's dear to my heart, is what does this mean for people, in deprived communities, where actually the pressing things are access to food and about keeping your house warm, when eco things seem like a very middle class kind of privileged thing to be doing, because it can come across as all kinds of things about, oh, you must go and buy organic food. Well, that means nothing when you happen to rely on food banks to feed your family. Or thinking about, oh, well, we must insulate our houses when actually you can't afford to turn on the heating and you're living in rented accommodation and have no control over it. I'd like to turn that around and say, well, actually, because of the holistic nature of what eco-church is about, it's about making those connections between the things we can do that are benefit to the environment will also benefit those most vulnerable in our communities. So if we put in actions as churches, programs to improve access to fresh food, to local food from local suppliers that doesn't put an impact on the poorest, if we put in place actions that reduce the amount of traffic pollution going past schools or through vulnerable communities, if we improve access to green outdoor spaces, either in our churchyards or other bits of community land, or by enabling people to travel out into the beautiful countryside, we improve the mental and physical health of those most in need. So it's about turning, I would suggest, that kind of thinking around. And I was very pleased to see yesterday on Twitter that a number of the Northern DEOs met with Stephen Cottrell and others over in York and discussed creation care and addressing urban deprivation in kind, that they are not separate and in conflict with one another, but are in fact co-solutions together. And it'd be really good to hear some of the outcomes of those conversations, and I'd be really pleased to hear those, because I think it can get... Eco-church itself can sound a bit like a very nice, pretty thing. And whilst it is a lovely thing, and it's a joy, and it should all be done from a point of celebration and a point of hope, it has to be meaningful in our communities and our churches. So eco-church isn't a tick list, it's a creative and a reflective process. It isn't an end in itself, it's the beginning of a journey. And it isn't prescriptive or exhaustive, it's what is possible in your context. Now the eco-church award programme works through basically those 5 sections: worship and teaching, buildings, land, lifestyle, community and global engagement. And there are a list of questions, and to a certain extent it is a tick list because you can go through it and it gives you prompts to answer questions, but it's supposed to make you think and reflect and say, what are we doing, what can we do? What isn't on this list that Rocha haven't thought of? Because there's loads of stuff that we haven't thought of because the questionnaire was written 7 years ago. And so, for instance, there isn't currently a section about church flowers. And there will be, but there isn't currently. It's things like that. So if you're doing stuff, or you think there's an issue that should be addressed, then it's not the list. The survey is not there to kind of limit your thinking. It's to encourage thinking and for you to tell us also what other stuff you're doing. And it shouldn't be a solo effort in the churches. It needs to be a wholehearted thing and a holistic, whole church endeavour. And it's not an add-on to church life. From the secular world, it is an embedded part of our Christian faith and biblically based. And it's not meant to be onerous. It's supposed to be a joyful thing. I always say, start from a point of celebration. Look at what you're already doing and go, right, that's fantastic, we're actually doing loads. Because if you go through the survey, you'll look and you go, actually, all we've got to do is change 3 things slightly, and we've got ourselves a bronze award with no effort whatsoever. Because actually, lots of the stuff that churches do in having harvest festivals, in promoting, having jumble sales, recycling stuff, in making jam from gluts of fruit and selling them, rather than encouraging people to go to the supermarkets. All this stuff we already do in lots and lots of places. And it's meant to help people. Again, just coming back to, it's about engaging our communities on how we can help, especially those most vulnerable in our communities, both locally and globally. And just reflecting back on what's been said about buildings this morning. That is part of it. I don't want to concentrate on it, but the Church of England's route map to net zero is a very good document, and it's a pragmatic document, and there's lots of good stuff in it to help churches get through it. And one of the key points is that it's graded. I don't like to be advocating on behalf of the Church of England when I'm speaking for a Rocha, but sometimes I have to say that the Church of England has got things right, and in this case it has, because what it says is the cathedrals and the top 20% of emitters, carbon emitters in each diocese, are the ones that basically, because they emit the most, they have to do the most. And then it works down. So if your church is a rural church that's open for 2 hours every 2 weeks, basically what you're asked to do is maintain and repair. Keep the drafts out, keep it damp-proof as far as you can, and that's basically it. So the onus is on the big emitters. As I say, the survey, the Eco Church Award system works through a survey through these 5 items, and once you answer these questions, and once you get to a bronze level of points in each section, you can get a bronze award. And likewise, once you get to silver in all 5 areas, you get a silver award. And when you have gold across all 5 areas, you get gold, and you get a little bit more assessment from our guys. So somebody will come out, possibly me, which is always a delight, because I get to come out and visit some beautiful places and meet some inspiring people. And you get a beautiful certificate, you can get a lovely plaque to display. But it's not about awards. Much as, everybody likes getting an award. I like getting an award. I've got 1 award in my life in my professional career, and I had to nominate myself for it. But I was still very pleased to get it. Awards are nice. We like to be affirmed in what we do. And they actually, getting an award as an Eco Church Award should be another point of celebration and a point of communication to your church community, to other churches in your area, and to the wider community about what you're doing, how you're engaging joyfully in God's work, this Holy Spirit's work in the world. And a reminder to ourselves that we are a people of hope. Because all the stuff around climate change, climate crisis, and indeed the biodiversity crisis is quite a heavy thing. And a lot of people, including people in our churches who are involved in this work, can find themselves in dark places sometimes, because it's hard stuff to look at in the face. So if you're involved in this work, or if you have people in your congregations, or you're responsible pastorally for them, do be aware of that. Love them, comfort them, affirm them in what they do, and give them space to grieve and lament, and give them space to rest. Just having a brief look through the various, bits of the themes of Eco Church. These are just some of the stuff that you can do. These are just random examples from all across, I think, because it's not just about sermons on Sunday mornings in worship. Although if you're having harvest festivals and you're praying your intercessions weekly about the environment or about the climate crisis, and if you're putting bits into your hymns into your liturgy or worship songs that address God's love for his creation, then you're already doing it. I will make sure these slides get sent out to you, so don't feel you have to take note of absolutely everything. And we're looking at buildings. These are two wonderful pictures. One is, I think that's Salisbury Cathedral with its array of solar panels, which is somewhat beyond most of us, I think. But the other picture is a picture of a church in Toxteth, over on Merseyside. And they are a Gold Award-winning church. And their way to address their heating issues was not to try and heat the whole building, but they basically put up 2 marquees inside their church and just heated within those. And I love the idea. Tents are very biblical, aren't they? So they have one tent for worship and another tent for children's work, and they just heat those spaces. And now they're kind of like famous around the locality because you're the church with the tents, aren't you? And they're really engaging, as well as ensuring that people are warm and their heating bills are reduced somewhat. But church, the building section is not just about carbon reduction. It's about your toilet paper and your cleaning products, your recycling points, and encouraging users if you've got users coming in who use your buildings, about encouraging them to keep to the same principles that you want the building to operate on. Again, I would just refer you back to, if we are to carbon reduction, do look at the Church of England's Environment Programme website. There's huge amount of help and resources. I don't think there's not a topic there that hasn't been covered. And it's genuinely really, really good. In terms of land, I always think it should be called biodiversity and not land, but does anybody here have a church without any land? Oh, that chap there. Oh, marvellous. Well, there is the option in Eco Church to opt out of the land section. Oh, well, there's an option you can opt out of the building section as well if you don't operate out of a building. But if you don't, you can opt out of the land option. We'd advise you not to, because actually we think, well, even if you've got a little bit of a car park, if you've got a place to put some planters, a hanging basket or 2, or if you can engage with, is there a piece of land in your community that you can adopt, perhaps in partnership with secular community groups, to transform? Then do that. And if your churchyard is closed, has anybody got closed churchyards? Oh, yes. And we get lots of this. People come back and say, we've got closed churchyard, the council looks after it, we can't do anything. I would suggest go and have a conversation with the council about how you might manage it differently in partnership. They're open to those conversations. They really are, because they're searching to do the same kind of things. And they don't necessarily think churches care or are interested, sadly. So if your churchyard's closed and you say, well, we can't do anything, it's all mown down to a nice green nub, well, actually go and speak to the council about how you might do that differently. But if you have got access to your own churchyard and in charge of the management, there are lots of things to do. There are, of course, a balance to be made in all of these, but churchyards are one of them in terms of what they look like, how they're managed, what they look like to the public. And it's about managing expectations and needs of communities. So perhaps you can't leave your entire churchyard unmown and given over to wildflowers, but you can give over those parts around the edges, near the hedges, for instance, whilst you keep those bits that are where people still come to visit their relatives' resting places, well kept and mown, and put up some signage and explain what you're doing, because it really, really helps. And there's some beautiful pictures. I particularly like the picture of the badger drinking out of the water fountain. Now, how am I doing for time? Okay, so community and global, this is all about engaging. It's squaring that circle between people and nature again. So if you're involved with food share, food waste reduction initiatives, if you're involved with Christian Aid or Fair Trade, if you write to your MP about things, I don't know what your MPs are like. I'm very lucky I have a good MP in these kinds of things. You might not be so lucky, I don't know. But I would encourage you to engage with MPs. Research has shown that if they get 10 letters on an issue, they will respond. Now, they might not want to, some of them, on particular issues, but research has shown 10 letters to an MP on one. So if you sent 10 letters from your church about whatever, about climate change, they will respond. And the thing is, MPs, it doesn't look good if they are unpleasant to children, or B, they ignore old people. The optics aren't good, you know, and some of our politicians, it's all about the optics and what thing. So make yourself a holy nuisance, is what I say, in every, you know, keep at them. Because actually you've got a bit of power in your hands. And they think Christians don't care. Some of them think Christians don't care about anything other than churches. And we can tell them otherwise. And keep at them. In terms of lifestyle, this isn't about policing people's personal lives, but encouraging change in domestic and church life and enabling that to happen. So not only like encouraging things, because things like encouraging ethical banking, well, it's all well and good if you've got money to save. If you haven't got money to save, it's not helpful at all. But it's about ensuring that perhaps you can run workshops giving on how to do carbon reduction in the smallest sense. But it's about also being seen to do it. This stuff should flow out of all the other four, really. And it's about encouragement, because we can't police what people do. We can, and I wouldn't suggest you do it. So what does an eco-church look like? Well, as I've mentioned, there's St Cuthbert with his otters around his feet, one of my favourite notions. I think you should draw on your Celtic saints' heritage as well. You have a great inheritance. You know, occasionally people refer to St Cuthbert as England's St Francis. Well, that's nonsense, because Cuthbert was here hundreds of years before St Francis was. So if anything, St Francis is Italy's St Cuthbert. Well, eco-church looks like, Gold Eco-Church looks like, in one instance, it looks like St Mary Magdalene at heart. But as I said, and it's a wonderful achievement, and I'm so proud of them, and I didn't get a chance to go and see them, unfortunately. One of my colleagues got to do the visit. And they've done all kinds of wonderful things. They've looked at their LED lighting, they've looked at their worship, doing some worship outside. They're looking now towards... they've got some medieval fish ponds, I think, which sound fascinating. But they're going to develop a community garden around that. And what they've done is involve various people to help survey for wildlife and work out what's there. But they're also then going to include it into a community space. And I'd just like to leave you with these words about what doing eco-church meant for Heart Church. This is from Hilary Squires. Some of you may know her. These are her words. The church united around eco-church. So many people have wanted to be involved. People are really concerned about God's creation and want to protect the environment. This is not just the young people, but also a concern for older people too. They want to make things better. You will be asked, what would you like me to do? Or can I help in any way? Or I would love my son or daughter to be involved. Have you a role for them? All amazing questions. And as I say, I will send these slides out. There are loads of support and resources out here. I will be in the, what's it called? Not a canteen, whatever it is, through there, with some more coffee, hopefully, will make my brain work a little better. I'll be there over coffee break, and I'll be there over lunch as well. So please do come, have a chat with me, take some leaflets, sign up for some communication, and may God bless you, and may the wind be always at your back.